Hey soul friends, welcome to Your Soul, a podcast and soul talk by Yaz. I'm so grateful that you're here today to listen to this powerful soul talk. She is a Latina fashion and content creator based in New Jersey. She is the founder of hashtag Style Not Size and hashtag Because It's My Body, which are both body positive campaigns to empower and inspire people of all shapes and sizes. The message that I hope you get from this is hope, to know that recovery is possible, and no matter what your journey looks like, know that there are people out there that can resonate and understand where you are coming from. So sit back, relax, and hang out with Denise and I as we talk about our journey through agoraphobia and panic disorder. Thank you so much for being on the SoulTalks podcast. This is a big step to share your story and share your truth and help so many others that are living with agoraphobia and panic disorder. Before we started recording, I was actually telling Denise about how when you go to your social media and you see how many followers you have and the content that you have where, you know, you're sharing your fashion, how you express yourself through your clothes, and being so empowering and showing how you can really just be yourself and express yourself. Like, you would never think that you struggle with agoraphobia and panic disorder. And I want to highlight that because a lot of times on social media, we think that what we see is that's it, right? We don't realize that people are so much more than what they put on social media. You know, I've had people tell me, like, how do you have agoraphobia and panic disorder when you're here having a whole podcast and like talking and so like with your personality big? And I'm like, well, that's not all of me. You know, it's a big part of me. But I want to talk a little bit about your story and, you know, your healing journey and what's gotten you to this point.
So I'm 31, but I started dealing with panic disorder and agoraphobia at the age of. I've been in this cycle for a pretty long time. I had my first panic attack in high school, and that led me to be homeschooled because at the time there weren't that many resources for panic disorder and agoraphobia. And when I had my first panic attack, I was like, I didn't even know it was a panic attack. You know, no one told me, oh, you're having a panic attack. So, you know, I ended up falling into like this really dark cycle. And, you know, I was basically kind of like dealing with it on my own. And although my mom and my dad and my family, they were so supportive, they just didn't really know how to help me. And I think that was like the hard part, because I didn't even know how to help myself, you know? And so I think that after going through like so many doctors and doing all kinds of tests, I mean, I think I've done like every single test that I could have done for everything to come out fine. And, you know, just never kind of figuring out what was wrong. And so eventually I ended up at one doctor, and, you know, he told me, he's like, look, I think you just have like a severe case of anxiety. And I'm just, I doubt it's anxiety because, I mean, I've heard of anxiety, but what I'm feeling just seems definitely not like anything near anxiety. Cause I mean, it got to the point where I couldn't leave my house. So I was like, okay, crap. So they ended up prescribing me a medication, Lexapro, which I took and changed my life. You know, I got back to my old self, and I went back to school, and I got a job, and I was traveling again, and I was just like living my life. And I knew that I wanted. So I actually went to school for psychology. Interesting. But like my life has nothing to do with psychology. It's like it's just fashion, but it was just the way everything happened. It like I graduated with a degree in psychology and I was working, but then around that time I was also like into fashion, and so I started to upload fashion content, which then kind of got me to where I am now, and it's definitely been a success. As for that, around the age of I would say like the age of like 23, 24, I relapsed again because the medication had stopped working. Especially because I was on it for so many years. And I think that my body was just like, okay, like it was used to it. And I fell back into the cycle. Around the time that I did fall back into the cycle, I was living with my partner, and he's been very supportive and, you know, very helpful. But time went by and I started to realize that like my condition just kept getting worse and worse and worse, until I was just like, okay, now I'm like battling between my disorder, but then also like my career. So I have to like work even harder to be able to produce the best content that I can. And a lot of the times I had to travel to New York for photo shoots or for meetings or for events, and it was getting really hard for me to start even going to those events. So it definitely became challenging. And now, at the age of 31, I'm still agoraphobic and I still deal with panic disorder. But now the way I look at it is completely different. So back then, growing up, I didn't know that, panic attacks were not dangerous. No one ever told me that. No one ever told me, just so you know, like that panic attack that you're having, I know it's like uncomfortable, but it's not going to kill you. No one ever told me that. You see, my whole life I was living thinking that I had to stop the panic attack.
Yes.
And
Resistance. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I thought. But no one like, and that's the thing. I feel like like the healthcare, like they don't talk to you about that stuff. And where I really started to get help was on social media, which I think it's like kind of sad, because it's like, why weren't doctors able to help me before?
Yeah.
And
It's
so
so true.
I've been coming across like people like you and other people, mentorships, and like, I don't know if you follow the Anxious Truth podcast,
Yes. Uh-huh.
and all of these people, and I was just like, wait, what? That was the way to recover all along, and I didn't know that. So I'm just kind of like, it took so many years for me to learn that, and now I'm in the process of recovering the correct way. And that's where I'm at now.
When doctors tell you like, oh, it's just anxiety, we can't help you, it leaves you as the patient and as the person suffering feeling like, well, there must be something really wrong with me because I feel these symptoms. One, I can't live my life. Two, I'm having these panic attacks that keep on happening. And you're here telling me that nothing is wrong with me. And that creates a lot of like also anger with like medical doctors and stuff, because it's a real thing that can debilitate you to the point to where you don't live your life. And that's what agoraphobia is. It's like when panic disorder, and I didn't know this either. So I was diagnosed with panic disorder in high school, right? But I didn't know that at one point it could develop into agoraphobia. I didn't know agoraphobia existed.
Same.
I didn't. I was, and this is the thing in high school, and I know for you, you also said there was a time where you were like traveling and you were feeling better and you were out there. That's what I was doing. I was doing whatever I wanted. Like everything was great, everything was perfect. But then there came a point to where it started to get so bad, and the same answer was the same answer you got was like, no, it's just your anxiety. And it's like, but how? Like,
Wow.
there are people like you and I at some point to where you get housebound. It's hard for you to even leave your house, and no one fully understands how debilitating and how dehumanizing that can feel at times. You do feel less than, even though like in your heart that that doesn't change who you are.
Right.
So I want to bring that point up because you were talking about it earlier, that just because I have agoraphobia and panic disorder doesn't mean that I have social anxiety, doesn't mean that I don't like talking to people. So
Yeah.
what would you say, like, who are you if you were to remove the agoraphobia and panic disorder? Because that's just a part of something that we struggle with, but that's not all of us, right?
Yeah,
So,
of course.
I like to ask myself the question of like, okay, if I didn't have this, what would I be doing? Because that's our true essence, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, no,
So
of
what do
course.
you feel like that is for you?
For me, I think that I don't have social anxiety. I do love people, and
Mm-hmm.
I love helping people, and I love being around people.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I also have my times where I like do like my alone time, where I like, kind of just like binge on Netflix and just like kind of
Same.
just remove myself from the world.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that a lot of people, especially like in the like in my family, they would think like, oh, I guess Denise doesn't like being around people, but they didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand that it was the whole agoraphobia thing that was kind of getting in the way.
Yeah.
I've always been like a nervous person. Like I always dealt with anxiety and generalized anxiety, but
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until I was like 17 that it became, you know, like a panic attack, then panic
Mm-hmm.
disorder, and then agoraphobia.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely describe myself as very outgoing, and I love people. I love going to places. If I didn't have agoraphobia, I would be like traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And so the last time I was on a plane was in 2018. And that was
Mm-hmm.
before my panic disorder started to get worse. Because that's what happens, right? Like sometimes your circle could be like this, but then like something happens and then it just starts to like sink, right? Like it's like just close up together.
Mm-hmm.
And so around the time where my life was like this, I was still like traveling. I had went to California for like a job, and it was super fun. I loved it over there. And then, I went to Miami for another job, and then I went to Dominican Republic. So I have a lot of family member that live there. But Dominican Republic was like my favorite place. I would go every single year. And then 2018 was the last time I had flown.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because I literally had a horrible panic attack when I was boarding on the plane.
Mm.
And it was awful. And ever since then, I haven't traveled. If I didn't have because I think about that question all the time. Like, what would my life be like if, I didn't have panic disorder or agoraphobia? And I said to myself, well, I'd definitely be traveling, and I would definitely be, just doing a lot more things on my own, I guess. It's something you don't often think about because when you're like in the moment and you're dealing with this disorder, you're kind of like figuring out how to get out of it, but you're not really thinking about like, well, what would your life be if like you didn't have it,
For me, when I was at the darkest point of it, it was hard to survive the next day. It was hard to walk to the corner of my own street.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being at that point and thinking to myself, I will never be here again. Like, I can't ever do this ever again, because I know that if this wasn't my reality, like, I would be out there helping people, exploring, experiencing new things. So the fact that you have that same like want and that desire there, and I have it too, it just goes to show that like, just because we struggle with this doesn't mean that all those dreams and all those visions and everything we want for the future goes away. They're still there, and they're gonna happen. They're going to happen, but we just have a different process and a different journey to get through this panic disorder and agoraphobia, but we're going to get there. And I always say, like, think about the person that's going to get through to the other side. Think
Mm-hmm.
about how strong and how powerful and how capable we're going to be when we fully, fully, fully get into this place of living our lives completely again, because we're going to get there.
Yeah.
But it definitely is like a step by step process. I love that you said you listen to the Anxious Truth and people like that. Someone that also helped me a lot was From Panic to Paris. I did a podcast with him, and he also shares his recovery journey and the Dare book. Like, there's all these resources and stuff like that. What resources aside from that have you found helped you the most?
So I've also worked with Panic to Paris. I think
Mm-hmm.
Glenn, he's my
Yeah,
friend.
Glenn.
Absolutely great.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's Anxiety Fitness, who's Peter.
Yes.
He
Mm-hmm.
is
Peter.
absolutely amazing, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been seeing his recovery journey, and I'm just so happy for him.
I'm so
And
happy for him too.
he
I saw the plane video. I was watching that. That made me so nervous
it did.
seeing it. And I was like, I know I'm going to do that one day, but like just
And you're
watching
like
it,
waiting for the
Mm-hmm.
anticipatory anxiety when you book a flight.
Yeah.
I think honestly, that's probably the moment that I'm dreading the most, is when I
Mm.
book my first flight to go on
Mm-hmm.
a plane. It's not even the plane itself, but it's the anticipatory anxiety that I know I'm going to feel.
Anticipation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I love that. Yeah, all these people in this circle, it's just beautiful, because we never know if what we have to say in our story is going to change someone's life. And I know for certain, like watching Peter's videos, Glenn helped me change my life. Like when Glenn on the podcast told me his story about how he ran that marathon or that half marathon and
Mm-hmm.
finally told himself that he was recovered and then booked that flight and left. And when I heard his story, the next day I started going on runs every
Yeah.
single day for the next couple of months. And that is actually one of the first things that got me to like the next stage of recovery.
Wow.
So that's why I'm so passionate about creating this platform, because I've even had my life changed by the people that I've spoken to. So
Right.
I want to, continue to get our voices out there, because yeah, it's so important.
Yeah.
But just to like kind of ask, like, where are you right now in your recovery journey? Like, where are you at?
Um, so as of right now, I'm not where I want to be. I mean, granted, I feel like we have a lot of ups and downs, and sometimes, you have a lot of setbacks. But as of right now, I'm doing things, and I'm going on exposures whenever I can.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a safe person who is
I
my
do too.
partner, and
Same.
I don't do anything unless it's with
Mm-hmm.
him. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely going to be very challenging, because not only am I trying to um, go on exposure, but and trying to recover from panic disorder and agoraphobia, but I also have to learn how to let go of my safe person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I am going to be working with this new therapist. Her name is Paige,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and we are going to start doing interoceptive exposure therapy,
Mm-hmm.
which I have never done before. And
Okay.
then I started taking a new medication, I was, which is how I ended on your page,
Mm-hmm.
because I it was Zoloft, and
Okay.
I
Mm-hmm.
looked on TikTok to see like if I can find any other people
Oh.
using Zoloft, and
Okay.
came across your video, and I remember in the video you were taking your first pill, and you're like, "This is it,
Oh
it's
yeah, the
time."
one in the car.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, and that's how I came across your page, and I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I just knew I had to follow you. You were super inspiring, and because I was super scared to start the Zoloft,
Mm-hmm.
and when you took it, I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna take it. I'm just gonna take it,
Yeah.
and I
Dude,
started.
I was terrified too, trust me. I was so scared. And that's why I was making those videos because, at that time, like, I was at my rock bottom and I needed to try something different, and I finally was like, I've always been against medication, but it's time. I need to try something. And I will tell you, how long have you been on it now?
I've been on it for 3 weeks.
Okay, 3 weeks. Okay, that's great. I would say that after the third or fourth week, I started to feel a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. Like
Yeah,
it genuinely did help me. I think that it's something that I did need on this journey to like help me get to a better place. And
of course.
actually recently, this last week actually, I got a dosage increase, so now I'm like dealing with that, like getting used to a new dosage because that takes another week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get
Yeah,
used to. But
yeah. Oh
I'm
my
so
god.
happy for you that like you decided to try it, and hopefully it does help you and continue to help you get to that next stage of your recovery journey
My
too.
god. For sure.
um yeah.
I So when I first took Zoloft, like the first week was,
Hmm.
I was like, I felt more anxious than I felt
Yes.
before I started even taking the medication. And I was like talking to
Hmm.
my doctor. I'm like, wait, I don't know if this is gonna work. I'm like, because
Yeah.
I feel even more anxious. And she ended up telling me, well, that's actually a good sign. And I'm like, really?
You're
She's
like,
like, yeah.
what?
Like that means that, like, I mean, at first you're gonna feel like heightened anxiety, but it
Hmm.
will get better. So the fact that you're feeling anxious means that it's getting introduced into your body. And I was like, oh,
That's
oh,
interesting. That's a
hmm.
reminder that I needed actually this week because I was asking myself, I was like, man, like I thought this dosage increase was gonna help. And I was struggling so much yesterday when I was out. Like I was just like, God damn, like here we
It's
go again.
it's hard.
But
I'm like, it's making my anxiety worse. So I'm like,
hmm.
the hell is this gonna help my exposure?
Hmm.
And so, I've been on the medication. It's been, I'm on week 3. I've been starting very slow, but I'm also on Lexapro.
Yeah.
So my psychiatrist has me on both Lexapro and Zoloft,
Hmm.
and she's cross tapering me because I
Okay.
had been on Lexapro for so long that
Oh, okay.
doing is that she's starting me on a very
Mm.
low dose of Zoloft, and then
Hmm.
as I go up on Zoloft, I'm going to start going down on
Switch.
Lexapro, and then
Oh.
we do the switch. So on week 1 on the medication, my anxiety was at like a 10, and then like on week 3, now it's like starting to go down at like a 5 and 4, and I'm like, okay, I think this is good here. I've never been against medication.
Hmm.
In fact, I think that because don't get me wrong, and this is why I think a lot of people are like kind of against medication, is that you can recover without medication.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
Hmm.
seen it. I mean, look at
Hmm.
Peter.
Oh
He's
yeah, Peter's on a
recovered.
plane.
He's on a
Yeah.
plane, and he
He's on
has
a plane.
not taken any medication.
Hmm.
He's told me about it, but other people, I just think that like one thing that my psychiatrist told me is taking these medications will help you just be more receptive to exposure
Mhm.
therapy. And
Mhm.
it's just a great way. It's like a great tool to kind of just help you when you're out on your exposure, because a lot of the time, especially like if like, you know, our anxiety is so high, like so high. It's
And
just
you
like,
feel so drained
yeah,
after.
feel
Like, you get a hangover, and that's what I always say, I'm like, "You get an anxiety hangover, you feel like shit." I mean, I have to bleep that out, but you do, you feel like shit, and that's like, you get home, and then it all hits you, kinda like the fatigue, you have to lay down, like, you genuinely feel hungover, and that's something that it's like, like, so I just wanna live my life, like, it's exhausting sometimes, and yeah, medication can help with that, and that's why we need to share our story, because I had so many scary stories about it that stopped me and that stopped me from trying it for myself.
Mhm.
And I know so many people are just terrified to take like that first one
Yeah.
and just start it. And it's like, I had to get to the desperation level of I am at rock bottom to finally
Yeah.
start, you
Yeah,
know?
no, I
Yeah.
know that. I know there are people who are genuinely like very like skeptical about
Yeah. Very
medication,
scared.
and they're like, no, like, I don't need that stuff,
Hmm.
or I don't need it in my body. But I
Yeah.
just think that, like, you should definitely like just give it a try, because you
Yeah.
never
Hmm.
know. I mean, again, so Lexapro helped me. It helped
Hmm.
me tremendously. I mean, because of Lexapro, because at first I was housebound. I couldn't leave the house. I was just
Hmm.
like, it was terrible. And this was during my junior year of high school. So I was on home instruct. Like, I had teachers come to my house. That's pretty sad at the age of 17. And so when I started the Lexapro, I mean, it genuinely helped me. Like, I
Hmm.
was out traveling again. I was like living a normal life. Now, what didn't help was the fact that I still didn't know much about panic disorder and
Mm.
agoraphobia. Like,
Mhm.
knowing everything that I know about panic disorder and agoraphobia, I don't think I would have had that relapse, because the thing about it is that I was still under the impression that you were not supposed to experience panic attacks. Like, that panic
Yeah.
attacks were just like, oh, if you have a panic attack, there's something wrong with you. I didn't
Mhm.
know that. But now I think that, again, medication is more like a tool to help
Mhm.
you in your recovery journey. The mistake that I made was that I completely depended on it. And
Mm.
so years later, I think that, after the medication stopped working, I think that, like, now I'm learning it's not just a medication. You actually have to understand, panic
Mhm.
disorder, and learning to live with it, because panic attacks are not dangerous. And although they do feel dangerous and they feel horrible, like, sometimes I'm like, what was God thinking?
Yeah, like, come on, like, we got a lot of stuff to do, we got a lot of people to see, we have
I
all these
know.
dreams, all these things, like, come on,
Like,
Yeah, I
why would
know,
they
yeah.
feel so horrible?
Yeah. It really is. And it's so funny because what is key, like you said, is like once you start to learn what it actually is and how to work with it, like the whole story changes. Because for the longest time, I used to resist it. I used to stop it. I would fight it. I would
Mhm.
like brace for impact. I would make it worse. Like, I would do exactly the opposite. And you had to like literally change that and be like, okay, no, anxiety can come with me. I'm going to give it a hug. I'm going to
Yep.
tell it can be here. I'm not going
Yep.
to fight it. I'm going to listen to it. And you're like, what the hell? What do you mean let the anxiety happen?
I
You
know.
have
I
to
know.
accept it. And it freaking sucks.
I
But it's
know.
the truth. And it's part of this is just what we're struggling with right now. But it's not going to be like this forever. We literally need to become best friends with our panic. And that freaking sucks sometimes.
I
But
know.
it's trying to
Yeah.
keep us safe. And once I started to understand that, things started to get a little bit better and a little bit better. But you can't live with yourself as the enemy. And I
Hmm.
think that that's part of the problem, is that we think at one point that panic is the worst thing that could ever happen to us, that panic is what makes us unlovable, what makes us less of a person, what takes our life away. And in reality, it's something that we have to accept to transform it. And I
Hmm.
think just like even that process of recovery, it's so needed, but it's kind of painful,
It
you
is.
know?
No, it,
Mhm.
it absolutely is. And the fact that, I've, again, like, because I've been dealing with this for
Mhm.
so many years, I thought that I had to resist it. I thought
Mhm.
that I had to avoid it, and I thought that it wasn't supposed to happen, but now that I'm learning that, like, wait, panic was never the enemy, it was just
Mm-hmm.
there to protect you. And it was just kind of learning how to just remind it, like, oh no, everything's okay. You could be here, but I'm
Yeah.
fine. I'm like, well, if I would have known that when I was 17, I probably would have been recovered. But again, they didn't have like all of that, like those resources to help me and to just help other people. And so now I'm 31 and I'm learning. I'm just learning that. I think I learned this like a year ago, you know
Yeah.
and that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at now. And so the therapist that I'm going to be working with, Paige, so we're going to be doing interoceptive exposure therapy. And basically what interoceptive exposure therapy is exposing you to the symptoms of panic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, we're not necessarily afraid of like the panic attack itself, but we're afraid of the symptoms that come with it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like the racing heart, for me, it's like racing heart, nausea, the sweating,
Oh, the
the
sweating.
shaking, the
Yeah.
belly rub, feeling like I'm gonna pass out, feeling like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like I'm just gonna go crazy. Like it's like the
DPDR
worst.
for me too is like a tough one.
DPDR,
Yeah.
oh my god. And sometimes DPDR just be like hitting you out of nowhere. Like you can
Oh
just be like
yeah. That one's like a
walking your
break.
dog and
That
it's
one
just like
hits you. Hmm.
you're like
You're like, wait, what?
like what just
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, it's funny though because I remember once I started like changing a little bit my relationship with DPDR, I remember the first time it came and I was like, oh, I was like, here you are again. I was like, you know
Yeah.
what? Cool. I'll come back to reality soon. Like I had to
Yeah.
tell myself that and just be like, all right, I'm gonna let go. But yeah, like you said, it kind of just whew.
Yep, it just like the way it just comes, it like comes like a wave. And I'm just so those are like the feelings. And so basically what I'm gonna be working on is just getting used to those symptoms. So
Mm-hmm.
working on each symptom like separately and kind of exposing
Mm,
myself to each symptom.
cool.
And which, it would just be like, again, an extra tool when going out on your recovery
Of
and
course.
on your exposure, to just like, feeling the symptoms and not being so afraid of it. Because that's my problem. My
Mm-hmm.
problem, is because that's the thing. Everyone's problem is different. Like some people
Yeah.
can be afraid to drive because they're
Mm-hmm.
afraid that they're going to get into a car accident, or afraid that they're going to have DPDR and they're going to lose control, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's more like the symptoms, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that once I'm able to kind of like understand the symptoms and like really feel them and kind of like stop being so afraid of them, I think that's literally like the key to
It
recovery for
is.
me.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I think it's the key for a lot of us because when we resist the actual symptom, that's what triggers the rest of the response. So if
Yeah.
we start to take the power away from that first symptom, that's really where it starts. And I notice that times when I have a harder time, it's because I stopped the first symptom. It's because I
Yeah.
resisted feeling weird. It's
Right.
because I started to feel tense and I made it worse and I like
Yeah.
tensed up more,
Tense
you
up
know?
more. Yeah.
Yeah, you tense up more. So definitely that first wave of symptoms, it's all about changing the story with it,
Yeah.
and that's what doing the exposure therapy really is. It's getting comfortable with the discomfort,
Yeah.
telling discomfort that you love it, that you want to feel it, and it's just a like such a like juxtaposition all the time because you want to accept something that you're so afraid of,
Right.
but you
Right.
have to like meet in the middle and say, but I'm gonna live my life anyway,
Right. Right.
and it's a
Totally.
process. But I'm really excited for you to start with this new therapist. It sounds like she knows what she's doing,
Yeah.
especially.
She's
Yeah,
absolutely great. So her
I
patients are
might need her
mainly
contact. I'm like, I might need to add myself as a client.
Yeah, no, so her patients are mainly, well, her specialty is panic disorder and agoraphobia. I've actually
Hmm.
never worked with a therapist
That's
who
what I'm saying. I
specializes.
think I'm gonna hit a page too.
She's amazing. And so the way I actually met Paige, it was so weird. Like, because
Hmm.
she's actually I believe she's in Chicago. But
Oh,
it's
is she? Oh,
yeah.
even better.
It was so weird the way it
Mhm.
happened. So, I'm a frequent Reddit user, and I'm always posting on the agoraphobia and the panic disorder, and I'm always asking
Oh,
questions.
cool. Uh huh.
And I'm always just like posting things. I'm just like, oh. And I think I had asked a question about exposure, and I
Hmm.
think it was using benzos and stuff like that. And she responded to my post, and she's like, "Hey,
Mm.
licensed therapist here. I just want to say," and then she like wrote this long thing, and I was just like, oh,
Oh,
okay. And then I
okay.
had checked her out, and she was like, she makes YouTube videos, and like,
Mm.
she's like a therapist, and literally her specialty is panic disorder and agoraphobia. And I was like, wow. I'm like, where were you when I was dealing with this?
Yeah.
So that happened, and then I would say like 4 or 5 days later, I go on TikTok and I'm like scrolling through TikTok, and I came across this like one video of this guy talking about like exposure therapy, and I was
Mhm.
like, oh, but then he mentioned interoceptive exposure therapy, and I'm like, what's
Mm.
that? So of course I go on Google and I'm like interoceptive exposure therapy, and her video pops up, and I was
Oh,
just like
wow.
of the same, of page who had literally just responded to my post,
Meant
like
to
4 days
be.
ago on Reddit, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, how is that even possible? So I contacted her. I'm like, look, I was sent to you twice. I think that this is
Wow.
like
Hell
we're
yeah.
supposed
It's
to
a
be working
message.
together.
Yeah.
A message
You're like,
from
Paige,
the
you are
universe.
meant to help my panic.
Yes, exactly. I was like, you know what, Paige? I think it's time for us to work. And she's like, she's amazing. She's absolutely amazing. And at the time, she
Yeah,
wasn't
clients.
accepting new clients. She was
Mm.
running like full, and so she put me on the waiting list, and I waited a whole year. And literally last week was my first session with her, and I am so happy because when you're like sitting there like talking to like a therapist and they know exactly like everything, like I didn't
Mm.
even have to like explain what my panic disorder was, or like how I feel. It's just like I just tell her like, yeah,
Mhm.
this is it, and she's just like, yeah, and she understands what. But back when I was 17 and I was trying to tell them how I felt, they were looking at me like I had two heads, like,
Mhm.
um yeah, we don't know what's wrong with you, like we do not know what's wrong with you. And I'm like, what? That makes me feel worse.
Yeah, that's why it's so freaking life-changing when you finally find the people that really understand and get
Yeah.
it, where you don't have to make yourself literally look
Right.
like a crazy person. And I hate that word, like, because there's no one's crazy, but you get what
Right.
I'm trying to say, that it's like you literally have to tell people, like, I just feel this way and I feel this way, and there's no reason, but then this feels so bad. And sometimes you don't even have the words for it because it
Right. You
just feels
don't.
so, like, not normal, and
Mm-hmm.
people want to look at you and think, well, what do you mean? And they don't get it. So yeah, when you finally find that person,
Oh my
especially that's a therapist that can actually help you, that
Right.
gets it, that is life changing.
It is. It is
Mhm.
life changing, and I think that I remember just before when you were saying trying to explain to people how you feel. Imagine being like 17 years old and
Mhm.
trying to explain to my Dominican mom who
Oh,
barely
yeah.
speaks English, and trying
Mhm.
to explain to my mom the DPDR that I was having. She was just like, "What? Like what?"
Yeah.
And I think that was like probably the hardest part, was my mom
Mm.
not being able to understand, because I can
Yeah.
see like she wanted to help me, like she wanted to understand, and she wanted to
Mhm.
be there for me, but like she just had no idea what I was talking
They
about.
couldn't, yeah. I think within, like, especially, like, I know yours and I experiences, we can connect in that sense because, I'm also Latina, I'm Colombian. And, a lot of times in Latino families, it's believed that, like, anything with mental health is just that you have to pray more, that you have to believe in God more. And that's usually the response because mental health isn't seen as a real thing. So when you try to explain to your parents that you have a panic attack, they don't understand. They think, well, oh, well, you're gonna be fine. Like, just be okay with it, and no,
Right.
it's gonna go away. And they don't seem to fully grasp it. And it took me a long time to get my parents to the point to where they kind of understood, but I
Right.
also had to let go of the idea of that maybe they won't ever fully understand,
Yeah.
because that's in and of itself of trying to make everyone understand. We start to get, like, waste our own energy because we want our loved ones to understand. That's normal, that's natural. But sometimes if you've never experienced this reality, it's really hard to explain,
Really.
and sometimes your loved ones, like, they love you, they want to be there for you, but they can only understand up to a certain degree. So I definitely resonate with that whole parents thing because yeah, they wanted to help me too, but I didn't know how to help myself. I think that was the problem. We
Right.
don't know how to help ourselves at some point. So how can we explain to you how you can help me? you know?
Exactly.
I'm like, I don't know, you tell me. How can I help myself?
Oh
you
no.
know?
Like I think I
Mhm.
remember one time my mom she brought like this lady to pray, and
Mm.
I was it was me and it was my cousins and my brother, and we were like holding hands in the circle, and this lady was like doing like this hardcore prayer, to bless me, thinking that maybe like that was what I needed. And I was like, I appreciate it, but I'm so agoraphobic, so
Yeah, yeah. And here's the thing. The thoughts and the prayers, of course, they help anyone and everyone, right? Like it's good energy. Regardless, it's good energy. Good energy will give life and love to anyone, and that helps. But yeah, it doesn't change that you're agoraphobic. It doesn't change that we have panic attacks. It doesn't change that our symptoms come up and that they're hard to live with, you know? So that's why it's so important to advocate for what we need, because sometimes we need a specialized therapist, someone like Paige, or we need people to mentor us like Glenn and like Peter and stuff like that have gone through this journey and been recovering. So we need to learn from the people that are actually doing it, because they
Right.
know how debilitating it is at the darkest parts.
Yes.
So that's why it's so important to reach out, and that's where social media can be a blessing, right?
Yes.
It can
Yeah.
be a curse, but it can also be a blessing.
For sure. That was where I learned that we weren't supposed to fight the anxiety, that we were supposed to actually just let it be there and accept it. And I'm just like, really? I learned this on social media, and like not from like, like doctors here, or like, therapists, or like, you know what I mean? Like trained
Yeah.
professional. Like what's going on here, And so I'm really happy. I'm really happy now, because although it did take a long time for me to find the help that I actually needed, but I am proud of myself for like not giving up.
We've done it before and we will do it again, but it's just baby steps, exposure, kind of working on it little by little and changing the relationship to those reactions, and using coping skills that'll help us too, like that there's no shame in you using coping skills. For me, for a while, when I was starting my exposures, I was scared to like show myself that I needed help, if that makes sense,
Right.
So I also had to remove that thought from my mind and say, you know what? If holding an ice pack to my chest makes me feel better walking in the middle of a store, then I'm going to do it. And I don't care what anyone has to say to me, because I am here at the store and I am not losing hope in myself, and I am progressing forward, and I am in a grocery store. So if I have to hold a block of ice, I will hold a block of ice. There was one time where I was at the store again after like, being housebound. I literally put my hand like into the frozen like section and just like kind of stood there for a second, because I needed that like physical kind of like, sensation of like something cold. And I was like, I don't care who looks at me. I need to do this for myself. I'm like, hey, I'm at the store. You know what? So we got to do what we got to do. And I think that that is something that I want to share with anyone listening to. Use your coping skills if you need them, right?
Yeah.
But there will be a point to where you won't even need them, and that day will come. But we just have to keep on like just little by little, little by little.
Yeah, no, that's one thing for sure. It's putting yourself out there. It's learning also. I think like a lot of there's people who are probably agoraphobic and they don't even know it, and I
Yeah.
feel bad, because I feel like just thinking that other people can go through something like this, it makes me sad, because I really, it's like, I'm like, I wish I could help like everyone who has it, but I'm like still trying to help myself. And so I'm
Me
glad
too.
that podcasts like this, and and resources, and and other mentorships exist. And I really do hope that everyone can get the help that they need, and kind of know like it's possible to recover. It's just unfortunately, there was just a lot of wrong information that was given before, and now it's like something that's it's more talked about, which is like great. I wish it was like that when I was 17, but it wasn't. I'm telling you, no one spoke about it. And I didn't even learn the term agoraphobia until probably like 3 or 4 years after I had developed it, which was really sad. But I think that I think that it's very possible to recover. And and I do hope that like our podcast, of us talking, just it can like reach someone who can know that they're not alone.
Yeah, no, I know it will. And I know they're listening to it right now, for sure, when they're listening to it. And we can give them a little bit of a message right now. I've experienced being fully housebound. I know what it feels like to be fully stripped of your life and everything you thought you knew of it. I know what it feels like to feel like you had all the potential in the world and all of a sudden it's gone because you have this thing that no one understands. It's an invisible disability. You feel debilitated. You feel like everything is lost and you're alone. But at that end of that rock bottom, I promise you there is a light, and you have to hang on to it and
Mhm.
make the steps forward, because recovery is possible, and Denise and I are proving it little by little. We're getting the help that we need, we're getting the resources that are possible, and we're moving forward, and you can do it too. So know that if you're listening and you're struggling with agoraphobia, that recovery will be possible, but put yourself out there, quite literally.
Yeah, literally.
Literally put yourself out there, and baby steps, little by little. I started my recovery process with going on walks to the corner of my street every day until I could walk a little bit more, walk a little bit more, walk a little bit more. And at one point, maybe like a month into walking every single day by myself, little by little, I would be like, okay, you know what? Today I'm going to walk to that sign now. Today I'm going to go and touch that tree. I literally did that for months. And I had to accept that that was my reality for me to get further and further and further. And
Mhm.
now, if I want to, I can go on like a 30-minute walk by myself. I can
Amazing.
go on a 40-minute walk by myself if I wanted to. You know, that's a big one.
That's
But
amazing.
it could. But it was because I didn't give up when I could only walk to the mailbox. And I had to let go of the idea that, oh my gosh, like how miserable that I can only walk to the mailbox. I had to
Right.
let go of that judgment I had within myself. So today, forgive yourself for not knowing better. Forgive yourself for being housebound. Forgive yourself for struggling with it. Love yourself and go for a little walk. That's my
Yeah,
advice for anyone listening.
of
Just
course.
start somewhere, you know. So, Denise, do you have any words for anyone listening that is struggling right now and that maybe is housebound too?
Yeah, no, I would say that you are not alone, and that it can get better and it will get better, and don't lose hope, because that is one thing, especially in my recovery journey, that I think I still had, that I'm grateful for having, is that although like I kept having setbacks over and over and over again, and not understanding and not being able to do the things that I wanted, I was still able to grasp that little bit of hope that I had left. And I
Mm-hmm.
just never let go of it. I just held on to it for my dear life. And,
Yeah.
because of that, I've been meeting a lot of amazing people like yourself, and
Thank
Paige and
you. Mm-hmm.
Glenn and Peter from Anxiety Fitness. Like I'm now finally understanding, like, there is light at the end of the tunnel. The
Mm-hmm.
help was always there, and it's now just finding it, and now doing it. And so, if you're dealing with this, you're not alone, and you will get the help you need.
Yeah, you will. You will. 100%. I will also tag these other people like in the description so y'all could follow them, like Peter, Glenn, and Anxiety. Wait, what is the Anxious Truth? Is that the
The-
handle?
yeah.
Yeah, okay, the Anxious Truth.
And
Yeah,
Anxiety
I'm gonna.
Josh, he was someone I just
Oh
started
yeah,
reading.
yeah, I have his books. Yeah. I will link them in this description of this podcast just so that y'all could see all these other creators that are also sharing the true steps of recovery and what life is like, and have a lot of actual real resources on how to help. So just know that help is out there, but you also have to look for it and you will find it. And that's why you came across this podcast. So also that's why you found it. So
I do want to
yeah.
mention Bye Bye Panic by
Hmm.
Sean.
Yeah.
Um, he's also great. He's
I
also
also, yeah. I was
he
like, I
gives a
also
lot
see
of
his
amazing tips.
content.
So he was also someone who's definitely been helping me as well, and his modules and his program. He's
Hmm.
also absolutely amazing. Like, it's great because there's like so many people now who are helping with this
Hmm.
condition. It's just like, it makes me so happy to see, because I'm like, people who are dealing with this, who were like me and they didn't know what to do. It's like, now, like, you have the resources.
Yeah.
And yes, it's unfortunate that when I was 17 and I had dealt with this condition, there weren't really any resources for me, but it's fine. Like, I'm still holding on, and I'm now getting the help that I need to get to recover.
Exactly. Yeah. And honestly, by you sharing your story, there could be someone who's 15, 14, 13 that might be struggling with this and is going to listen to this, and you're helping that version of yourself. You
Exactly.
know, like that's what you're doing by also sharing your voice. So just know that, I'm so grateful for you being on the podcast and sharing a little bit about your recovery journey and your experience. And thank you so much. And that's why it's so important to remember that we're stronger together. You know,
Yeah.
using our voice and advocating for our stories is so important, because just like all those other creators we talked about, like, have helped us, that's why we're truly stronger together. Because look at how much they've helped you. They have helped me so much too, to know that I'm not alone. Because when I was struggling at the darkest part, I was like, there is no way anyone else like there is. I know they're there. I know that there's other people who have this, but where are they? Right. So I
Right.
also had to look for them, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're here and we're
Here.
recovering, and we're also rooting for you, and we're sending you so much healing, so much love, and so much positive vibes, and you're gonna get through this. And Denise, thank you so much for being here. I want people to know where to find you and support you. Can you share your social media handles so that people can follow you?
Yes, of course. Denise Mercedes. You can find me there. I share a lot about fashion and, embracing your body and just loving yourself the way you are.
Love it. Yes, please go follow Denise. Please, please, please. Well, thank you everyone for being here and for listening to this Soul Talks. Until next time. Having these conversations proves that we are truly stronger together. We are not alone on this journey, and I know that sometimes it can be tough, but that is why we need to open the door and have these soul talks. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time.